Jonathan Hollander is an American dancer, choreographer, educator, and artistic director who founded the Battery Dance Company in New York City in 1976 and also opening the Battery Dance Studio that same year. In 1982, he founded the annual Downtown Dance Festival in New York City. As a dance educator, Hollander has been active in bringing dance into the public schools and is known for the award-winning Dancing to Connect program. He is also known for his ties to India and for presenting and promoting Indian dancers in New York. He is a co-founder of the Indo-American Arts Council. Hollander is the son of Joan Woolman Hollander, a pianist, and Bernard Moses Hollander, an antitrust attorney employed by the United States Department of Justice. The dancer was born in Washington, D.C., and grew up in Chevy Chase, Maryland, where he studied piano for 13 years with Robert Paris, Charles Crowder, and Hilda Novick. He studied folk dancing as a child and received his first theatrical experience at Michigan, where he performed in a production staged by American choreographer Carolyn Carlson. Hollander traveled to India in 1968 as an American Field Service exchange student, where he was first exposed to Indian dance in the class of Parvati Kumar. He began his own formal dance training while a student at the University of California, Irvine, where he studied with Eugene Loring, James Penrod, and Janice Plastino. Battery Dance Company is considered a pioneer in expanding New York's art scene to Lower Manhattan. The Battery Dance Company tours nationally and internationally, sometimes as a cultural ambassador under the auspices of the U.S. State Department. It has appeared at such notable venues as Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts in New York City, the Beijing International Modern Dance Festival, Taipei Arts Festival, Open Look Festival in St. Petersburg, Stockholm's Moderna Museet, Hyogo Performing Arts Center in Japan, Cultural Center of the Philippines, National Center for the Performing Arts in Mumbai, and others. Hollander has created more than 75 dances in the course of his career. Namaste, Jonathan. It is indeed a pleasure to have you here today. Pratibimb, Reflections of an Artist. It is an initiative of JG College of Performing Arts. And the whole idea of doing this was to create an archive of wonderful artists around the globe who have dedicated their life to art and the kind of work that they have given, which is an inspiration to the youngsters. So thank you very much for accepting this invitation and being with us today.
Well, thank you for including me. I'm very honored. Ahmedabad has a place in my heart going back to 1992, and actually way before that, from 1968, when I first visited the city. It was quite a different city at that time, as you can imagine. But I saw the Calico collection of textiles back in 1968, and I also visited the NID. And so as a young art student myself at that time, dance was not my discipline. It was more in the visual arts. To see the incredible history of Indian textiles at the Calico collection, which was not in a grandiose building at that time. It was in a very, what shall I say, a modest and characteristic kind of structure. I don't know if you remember from those times.
I think it was right in the heart of the city at that time on Relief Road. There was a dome and it was below that. Yes, I remember that. Yes.
But also NID, seeing the very, very innovative work being done by design students, even then. And so that was my first taste of Ahmedabad. And then 1992, when I did a Fulbright, 3 months in India as a Fulbright senior lecturer, I was attached to Darpana and had a wonderful experience there, as well as visiting the Kadam of Kumudini Lakya. I got a full flavor, and of course, the impact of figures like Mrinalini Sarabhai, Malika Sarabhai, and Kumudini Lakya. I mean, what an incredible inspiration and motivation for me within my own career. They all share, in addition to their very high intellect, scholarship, and of course, practice within the fields of Bharatanatyam, Kuchipudi, and Kathak. And I shouldn't forget Kathakali. But not only that, they all had a great sense of humor. Yes. And I think that artists who don't take themselves too seriously and can be the funniest person in the room, I think that that's also a very important quality that they share.
You know, when I was working and I was just starting off my career as an individual artist, and Kumundani ji used to be with the Sangeet Natak Academy, and she was the one who nominated me into the academy. I was one of the youngest to be taken in because they needed young people to run around and do work. So we traveled to Jamnagar once, Kumundini Lakia ji and Joravar Singh Jadhav, who's basically into the folk art. And I was sitting with Joravar Bhai, and Joravar Bhai is a person who's very calm, who, you know, even to burst out laughing is something you'd never get to see. And Kumi, when from the moment we left Ahmedabad, she went on a trip and we were all bursting out laughing. And I was shocked seeing Joravar Singh ji laughing. And I told Kumi, please stop it. Otherwise, this man is going to get a heart attack if you do this. So she said, no, that's all right. Let's enjoy. And you're very true. I mean, Amma and they had an amazing humor in them and the right moment to say things. Very true.
But the arts should be part of life, and life is part of joy, rapture, hilarity, as well as the tragic elements and the darkness that we all experience, especially at a time during the pandemic. Yes. On many other times with economic downturns, with racial strife. You know, the world is a difficult place for sure, but having a sense Absolutely. Of humor is something critical to survival at a certain point.
Jonathan, today you are reckoned as one of the foremost dance educators of the present era. Can you speak a little about your childhood days, your initiation into dance, and what motivated you to get into this field?
In a way, I had put my toe into every art form in terms of study, in terms of sculpture, painting, graphic design, music. I started studying classical piano at the age of 5 and continued through my schooling up to the age of 18. I was in theater productions as a child. So those were the art forms that I actually had practical experience within, but dance was something that I did as a casual recreational thing. I didn't have dance training, though my mother and my sisters had gone to dance classes in contemporary modern dance, what it was called modern dance at the time. So I knew what that was, but it wasn't something that I had access to. I was just dancing without any craft, so to speak, just natural dancing. And in a way that's stuck with me throughout my life is the fact that dance should be part of everyday life. It should not be set aside for only specialists to experience. And I actually have memories in Ahmedabad, in Darpana, with Malika and Shashi and Murli and the Bharat and Akshay, these Manoj, you know, doing the local folk dances of Gujarat. That's part of Darpana as well, not just the very serious study of the classics, but also immersing themselves in the revival and practice of the folk forms. So my initiation into dance was through folk forms and social dancing and dancing in musical theater, which is not highly crafted or the way that I was exposed to it. It was just dancing. You danced. Spontaneous. And if you had the right spirit, and knew your right from left, then you were on to it. But also, I think the fact that I am a very musical person, that music is a critical part of my life and always has been, that gave me the ability to pick up dance moves and folk dance in particular, which is so wedded. The music and dance go together. And also that sense of community. And that's something that's critical for me when you talk about arts education. If you are an artist who is involved with community and you care about the people around you and society, then folk dance is something that brings people together. It's a cathartic experience. It's an experience that can push aside daily concerns and allow people to feel their humanity, their common humanity. You have your arms on each other's shoulders, and there's a sense
Yes.
of, come in, join. Now we're all sequestered and isolated, and I think people are talking about the fact that they miss that kind of human contact that is normal and natural for human beings. And during the pandemic, where social distancing is enforced, it's a time when it just takes us apart, away from each other. And I think when the vaccine is available and when the pandemic recedes, that you're going to see a huge resurgence of a sense of community among people.
Absolutely, because these are things that, many times when you have it, you don't value it. And then when you don't have it, suddenly you feel, oh my God, what's really happened? I was also telling somebody that, if something like this had happened 10 years ago, today at least we have this medium to communicate. If it was 10 years ago in India and we didn't have all these facilities, I don't know what we would have done, because we would have been stuck inside the house with no communication, and people would have gone into depression if that was so. Just like you said, absolutely everybody is waiting to go out there and be there, and artists want to be back on stage with a live audience appreciating what they're doing, and not just on the internet and email. That's very true.
One other aspect that should be mentioned is the intergenerational kind of bonding between children, parents, grandparents. When I was in Ahmedabad in 1992, Anahita and Revanta were running around as little children. And then, of course, the dancers themselves of the Darpana dance company in Janavak. And then Mrinalini, who was still on, turn on the music, Mrinalini was there in the background dancing herself. So,
Yes.
this beautiful connection between generations is something that I treasure.
I remember once I went to Darpana, and Didi was having a rehearsal. They were all practicing there. That they were preparing for the Vikram Sarabhai festival. And Amma was hearing the music, and she had just come down the steps. And everybody was down there at Natrani dancing, and she was dancing all alone there to herself and, enjoying herself. And that itself was a piece to watch. And
Yeah, I had the exact same experience when I was choreographing a piece called Moonbeam for Malika and Shashi Dharan Nair.
yes,
It was a duet, and the music I chose was a very beautiful lyrical piece by Aaron Copland. I wanted something American in terms of the music, and then to bridge between Malika, Shashi, their background, and my own. And as we were choreographing on this side of the area at Darpana, I turned and looked to the side, and Mrinalini was off to the side making her own choreography, which I'm sure was more beautiful than mine.
yeah. In fact, those fingers of hers, and the way she used to hold her hands, and the way she used to be very erect and standing and beautiful. I mean, till the last day, she was like that. Jonathan, you have trained and learned under great stalwarts: Merce Cunningham, Margaret Kraske, Dan Wagner, Diana Baer, Janet Panetta, and Anne Parson at the Joffrey Ballet School. Who influenced you the most?
I'm an eclectic person, and so I'm somebody that gathers influences from many different directions. So I would say they were all very major influences. I couldn't single out one. My early exposure to the Javeri sisters in Mumbai, so in essence, I knew more about Manipuri dance at age 16 than I did about classical ballet or Western contemporary, because of my time living in Mumbai as an exchange student and meeting the Javeri sisters and sitting for a day in their home, Nayana and Sushil Javeri, and the three sisters with Nayana, explaining to me this beautiful form of Manipuri dance. And then Parvati Kumar, the Bharatanatyam guru in Mumbai, whose name for many years I thought was Guruji. I didn't know any other name for him. And watching him teach the young girls, going through their paces of Bharatanatyam training, and then watching him teach his senior students, Sucheta Bide, Sucheta Chapikar.
Yes.
You know, that those experiences were indelible marks in my consciousness.
In fact, what a coincidence. My fifth episode was on Darshanaben Javeri and her, the whole career, and, talking about Ranjana Ben and Suvarna and all of them. And also about her journey going all the way to Imphal and to Calcutta with Guruji and spending a lot of time there, and how her parents were so supportive. Because I was surprised, I said four sisters from the same house all going into the field of dance. It is amazing to have parents like that who are ready to, do that. And again,
but not only that these Gujarati girls would gravitate towards a form from the opposite end of India.
Yes,
and
true.
Actually, they paid a price for that to some extent, because people who were very ignorant, who cast themselves as experts, said, well, these women are Gujaratis, they can't possibly represent the Manipuri form, which is totally absurd. And I think that that's a bigger issue, a bigger question. Here in the United States, if we have a violinist as first violin in an orchestra, and that person is from South Korea, we don't say, oh, well, they're from South Korea, they can't possibly understand Western classical forms, because in fact, people from South Korea are doing incredible work in the field of classical music. In fact, you are ambassadors from India to the United States. Nirupama Rao is a classical Western musician of great talent. And, it's an old, dusty idea that should be discarded, that people must be born into a region in order to represent that form. And so the Javeri sisters, I was very proud to say that I organized their first American tour.
Oh, wow.
But you know that there's a generational difference between me and Darshana and Nayana, Suvarna, and Ranjana. So why did it take so long for the United States to bring the Javeri sisters to New York, Washington, and the other capital cities? Because there was prejudice. Because they were Gujaratis, not Manipuris. But as you said, from an early age, they were studying with Guru Bipin Singh, who was actually living in their home. So, it's nature or nurture in terms of how does somebody how does their character become informed? Well, their characters were informed by Guru Bipin Singh and, of course, their parents, who were extremely advanced and tolerant and liberal in terms of their thinking. Also, at that time in India, post-colonial era, independence, that was a time when the family that I lived with, Nirupa and Siddharth Mehta, were people who looked at the entirety of India. They didn't say, we are Gujaratis living in Mumbai, therefore our culture is the best, our food is the best. They said to me as a 16-year-old, Jonathan, you have to go to East India, you have to go to the South, you have to explore the different parts of India before you really know India. And fast forward till today, I'm very happy that life and fate have given me the opportunity to visit 17 cities in India, across the country. I have not yet been to Manipur. That is missing from my agenda. There's certain parts of India I have not experienced, the north, which, hopefully I'll live long enough to experience all of the different parts of India. But I say so many times in the United States when I'm meeting audiences here or even in Europe, that India stands alone in terms of its culture, all of these different cultures within the map of this incredible nation, and the diversity of religions, language, food, textiles, dance, 8 recognized classical dance forms with more to come. Nothing else like it in the world.
Very true. And in fact, where you mentioned Parvati Kumarji also, his work, and I remember many years ago, he had brought Sandhya Purecha to Ahmedabad to demonstrate all the various vinyogas of the Abhinaya Darpan. And we at that time were so ignorant that we didn't even know about him, neither about Sandhya Purecha. And when her name was suggested and his name was suggested, we said, okay, somebody from Bombay is coming. But that moment, the moment the performance began till it got over at Tagore Hall, we were stunned because the kind of performance that Sandhya Purecha gave under his training, we've been learning the Abhinaya Darpanam, but we never realized that, oh my God, this is what it is. And it was an absolutely out of the world performance. And after that, he was kind of registered in our minds, saying that there are very few people who've been doing so much of work and research on that. It was a wonderful performance.
I think that actually I can draw a comparison with Merce Cunningham, who actually is the person who brought me to New York and started my professional life at age 19. That his single-mindedness and his research and his innovations influenced untold numbers of people.
Yes.
And in fact, he and John Cage visited Darpana. I think that they actually stayed in, with the Sarabhai family. So the Sarabhais not only had their influence in terms of, the Indian context of post-colonial period, reviving the art forms and making them new and fresh and part of the landscape of the arts. They also brought in, people like John Cage, Merce Cunningham, and I think Robert Joffrey from the Joffrey Ballet, and invited them to come, Robert Rauschenberg. So across the art disciplines, like your department there, where students are exposed to the different art disciplines, the Sarabhais likewise were knowledgeable and thirsty for information and wanting to share information with the Indian audience and the Indian population of what they had experienced in the Western art disciplines. I had an experience when I was quite young. I was teaching actually at a summer dance program for younger dance students, and we brought in master teachers of different forms. And Anahid Sofian, who was sort of the leading dancer in New York, representing belly dance and the Oriental dance of the Middle East, she was a scholar who could decode and describe the differences between Egyptian, Turkish, Sufi styles of belly dance. If you're studying classical ballet and even a lot of modern, well, it's definitely in classical ballet, your posture is very erect, and you lift from the top of your head and you go down through the soles of your feet, and there's a way of moving. It isn't to say that you don't bend, of course you bend, yes. But in belly dance, it all emanates from the midsection of your body, of course. Yes. Now, again, that's mostly a female form, but I know that in India now there are male belly dancers in different places. But I never became a belly dancer and I never mastered the form. But what I understood from that 1 3 or 4 hour masterclass with Anahid was that there are ways of moving your body that in any of the other kinds of training I had, I would have never explored. And so when I became a choreographer, I think that motion and that the fact that there is that motion available, for example, in Odissi dance, which has the curves through the body, I think Odissi dancers understand that motion that comes from the hips and the belly area. So it's information. And Absolutely. It reminds me of my art teacher. I was doing a life drawing class, and I always inherited the idea that a bold line, a clear, bold line was the best way. And we had a model in front of us, and I was making these bold lines and getting the curve of the body. And my art teacher came up and just very quietly said to me, Jonathan, did anyone ever tell you that it was wrong to use detail and small, sort of delicate lines? And I was like, I didn't answer, but my brain, it was like an unlocking. And it's like, oh my God, I realized I had assumed that by being bold and clear that this was best. But of course, it's not. I mean, you have to have the full range of vocabulary. You cannot rule out an entire way of moving or of drawing or of painting or whatever. So these are the things you learn as a student, and that they stay with you in your entire life.
Yes, absolutely. I think every artist, every student should also understand that do not, one, come with the feeling, all right, I know everything, I don't need to learn anything. And the other thing is also to basically be ready to participate in anything that is happening, because that will help you out.
Well, I was very lucky, and not everybody has this fortune at age 16 to go from Washington, D.C. to downtown Mumbai and be thrust into a time when it was impossible for me to rely on internet or fax or any other kind of communication. I couldn't pick up the phone and use WhatsApp to talk to my friends at home. I was gone. Forget it. 3 months, I'm in India living as an Indian, and that there's nothing that can replace that kind of experience of international travel, of immersion in another culture, in terms of opening your mind, to a different world. And I just hope that students of the future, like right now, programs such as AFS, American Field Service, which was the one that matched me with Nirupama and Siddharth Mehta and Nandita and Anand, my Indian siblings, quote unquote, and the entire family that I'm still connected with now, that those programs are in danger now because parents can't send their kids abroad right now. So I hope that they survive and thrive as soon as possible, so that the exchange of ideas, the exchange of, sort of expanding your family, you could say. I hope that recovers and gets stronger and better in an age of globalization.
Yes, that's true. And I mean, as of now, everybody still cannot see the light and they don't know exactly how long and what. But everybody is just wishing and praying to God that things get as soon as possible much better, so that we are back into at least some kind of a normal life. Yes. Uh, Jonathan, you first performed for choreographer Twyla Tharp in 1971. Can you talk about your experience? I'm sure it must have been very tense and very exciting also, knowing how demanding Twyla Tharp can be.
Yeah, that was a very brief experience of someone who had just started the serious study of dance technique, being thrust into a situation with people with much, much, much more experience, talent, and ability. So I think you learn something from that. It's sink or swim. I actually performed in a performance with people who were much more advanced, talented, and into the field of professional dance than I was. But that allows you to reach high. We all have to have ambition in order to move up.
There's a challenge there, yes.
But also finding what you don't know and then setting yourself a challenge to fill in the gaps. That's a very important experience. Twyla is a genius, and watching her at work was a fascinating experience. I have to say I was terrified. Terrified also by my first genius in dance, Eugene Loring, who was one of the pioneers of American classical ballet, using American themes such as Billy the Kid as a theme for classical ballet. And he terrified me. I mean, these people are, you know, they're single-minded. They have such a what shall I say? I mean, they're so inventive. Twyla, Eugene Loring, Merce Cunningham, just beyond the beyond. And I realized I started dancing, the training of dance, I started too late. My body was already formed, hardened. I spent years trying to beat it into shape, like taking a hammer to a piece of metal and trying to make it molten, and I got as far as I could get. But I think the most important lesson there was I was never going to be in the league of the dancers around me. And I was somebody who could not accept second best or mediocrity. That was not an option for me. So I think that pushed me from focusing on myself as a dancer and performer to figuring out what I could do where I could reach excellence. And that was being a choreographer and an entrepreneur, somebody who set things in motion. Where could I deploy my own personal skills and talents that would allow me to flourish rather than to constantly feel that I had a weight on my shoulders and that I had a ceiling above me. I would go and see the New York City Ballet and American Ballet Theater. You could get student tickets in those days for $4, and you could go to Lincoln Center, you know, and see the greatest dancers in the world in terms of classical ballet. I would watch them and I would realize internally, as a young person does, can I do that? And I realized, no, I can't. And I think that's very important for young people to encounter what they cannot do and to be realistic about, you know, about their limitations. And I was such a headstrong person. You know, I just thought I was so great in everything. And I learned that I wasn't. I learned that I had severe limitations and that I better get realistic about what I could do in the world.
Right. I think that applies to both the youngsters and also the people, you know, because many a time we say that it is always nice to gracefully shift from center stage and move out when you know that you cannot really be part of center stage. So
actually, that was a benefit for me. The fact that I realized that I was not as good as some of the dancers that I could actually hire and use in my choreography, that I could learn from them and that they could inform my work artistically. That was a very important thing, and it actually made my transitions much easier. If I continued to think that I was the best and that I should be in center stage with the light on me, then that would have really, really limited my abilities as a choreographer. Instead, I could focus on them, on my dancers, and try to bring out the best in them and use their skills and their visions and their capabilities to enrich whatever production I was working on. So I think it was actually a benefit. It was just very hard. I mean, it was depressing to be constantly seeing your own shortcomings.
You're a choreographer, educator, and an artistic director. You founded the Battery Dance Company in New York City in 1976, opening the Battery Dance Studio the same year. Can you please talk a little about the activities of the Battery Dance Company?
We were located in a part of New York City, in part of Manhattan, where there was very little in the way of art. We were in the middle of banks, law firms, insurance companies, businesses, and we were not surrounded by the world of theater, the world of dance, or the performing arts. And in a way, that presented a challenge and an opportunity, because we were, you know, we were not in the middle of so much competition that it would have been suffocating.
Right.
And there was a sense that what we could do was actually needed in that particular part of the city. So we began performing out of doors because there were no theaters to perform in. And of course, that became the stepping stone to creating what is now the Battery Dance Festival, that just had its 39th season New York's longest running public dance festival. So serendipity of where we were located and taking stock of the world around us and understanding what is the need here, what can we do to fill a, and so we've presented Janavak and Malika Murali, the whole group, in our festival. The names are too many to even mention, but in 1992, when I came back from India, 1993, I brought the Javeri sisters and C.V. Chandrasekhar and his dance company, and they toured the United States under our umbrella. And that was C.V. Chandrasekhar's first American tour, Javeri sisters' first American tour. And the next year we brought Janavak. So, it's been wonderful. And then fast forward to the last couple of years where we had Kumbudini Lakya's Yugal performed by our own local brilliant dancer, Kathak dancer, Parul Shah, and her partner, Mohit Jorder. That duet is one of my favorite pieces of any genre. And I was so happy to have it presented in front of the Statue of Liberty on our stage with thousands of people in the audience, along with Sandeep Malik and Piyush and Priti, and of course, Anuj, Mishra, Kantika, and Neha. So we had Lucknow, Delhi, and New York, and Kolkata all represented on stage in the Kathak performance. And the next year, we had Darshan Javeri, Sanjeev Bhattacharya, Sinam, Basu Sinam, and Monica. We had this whole incredible Manipuri production. So share about that. I'm deviating from your question, but one of the things to share about this Manipuri production, which was absolutely incredible. I mean, to see Darshana on stage, commanding an audience of thousands of people who had never seen her form before, and delighting and marveling at the nuance and the subtlety and the beauty of her presentation, as well as everyone else on stage. I had Indo-Americans who were knowledgeable about Bharatanatyam or Odissi or Kuchipudi coming up to me and saying, I never saw this before. Those costumes, those gestures, what a magnificent dance form. So I was introducing Manipuri to an Indian, Indo-American audience for the first time. That was very surprising to me. But also, of course, very rewarding. It's like you work for months and months and months to try to pull together the support. Fortunately, we've had wonderful consuls general of India in New York, a whole series of them going back to Harsh Basin in the early 1990s, I think, when he encouraged me to bring together a group of people that eventually became the Indo-American Arts Council. And then we've had Viva Ganguly Das, who then became the Director General of the ICCR and now is, I think, the High Commissioner in Bangladesh, Sandeep Chakravorty, and now Ranjit Jaiswal. I mention these names because these are individuals who occupy a position in the Indian, Ministry of External Affairs and go abroad to deal with political issues, to deal with consular issues. But these are people who actually believe in the arts. And so when Jonathan Hollander comes and knocks on the door and says, I would like to present, next year, I would like to present Mayurbhanj Chow and Gotipua and Odissi dance at my festival. Will you help me? Because I cannot do this on my own. And then lobbying with ICCR, and trying to put across the idea that the American audience is ripe for Indian dance. We need to show them what it is and, get out of the textbooks and into the staging of these beautiful art forms. So it's an enormous effort. I don't think people necessarily understand that because unless you do it, you really don't know what all the steps are to make it happen. But it's about public-private partnership. It's about authenticity. Like Battery Dance is a nonprofit charitable organization. Nobody is making a profit from this. We are paid salaries, but the salaries that my staff could earn if they worked in a commercial field, exponentially more money than they would be earning here. But they are dedicated to the same things that move me and that propel me forward, and that is the human connection and the peaceful understanding of one culture to another. People sometimes say, well, I don't understand the language of the lyrics in the music, so therefore I can't understand that dance. Well, I don't understand any of the lyrics of any of the languages, but I understand the language of movement and of dance. So I'm not parochial. I don't subscribe to one over the other. Recently in our festival this year that had to go virtual for we were able to explore Teyam from Kerala and Kudiyatam from Kerala. Now, I had never seen these forms before. I had never actually heard of Teyam before. I heard of Kudiyatam because Farley Richmond, a professor, American professor, has studied Kudiyatam for years, and I heard the word, but I didn't know what it was. And to see Kapila Venu and to see Pradesh Tirutia doing these forms of Kudiyatam and Teyam, like the audience was transfixed, and I have become fascinated that in this state of Kerala, I knew Kathakali, of course, I knew Mohiniyattam. We had presented Pallavi Krishnan, who just electrified me and the audience in terms of Mohiniyattam, but and Kerala Kalamandalam had been here many, many years before, but Teyam, Kudiyatam, much less exposed, but worthy of attention and fascination by the American audience. So there's always more to explore.
Yes, yes. In fact, Kerala itself has got so many of these folk art forms and cult forms and all that, that when you move from the north to the south of Kerala, it is so different. Even Kalari, something like Kalari is different in the north of Kerala and the south of Kerala.
I should have mentioned Kalari Payatu also, yes. Well, I was because, of course, the great Chandralekha used Shaji Jan and other dancers who, were trained in Kalari, and Daksha Seth also, of course, has incorporated Kalari into her work. I just think it's a singular aspect of India that there are states where these very distinctive, very unique forms of dance are practiced. In the United States, you would find a difference in terms of the folk forms.
Yes.
But you'll find classical ballet in every city in the United States. You'll find some form of contemporary dance in every city in the United States. But other than that, you won't find indigenous. You might find tap dance in many places. You might find jazz in many places, jazz dance. But there's just not this ancient lineage of tradition that blends everyday life, as you said, ritual and dance all into one. It's just an extraordinary country in that way. And I have had the opportunity to speak to the Indian government and Indian thought leaders about the fact that in terms of tourism, in terms of cultural diplomacy, in terms of the strength of the nation, that dance is a tool that can be implemented to raise the profile of India in general.
Yes.
Now, taking it as an example of how that can work in another country, Finland is a very small country with a very small population, but back in the day, a composer named John Sibelius, who was an extraordinary composer, distinctive musical language that ended up being performed in orchestras around the world. Through John Sibelius, people found out, where is Finland on the map and what is Finland? And let's think about that. And Finland got very smart, and they developed musical education and scholarships and fellowships and funding for musicians. So in successive generations, you have conductors, you have violinists, you have vocalists, you have composers from Finland who are dotted across the map of the world, making incredible headway. And India could be doing the same thing, using dance as a vehicle for raising the profile of the country.
Oh yes, in fact, even something like this, the very traditional form of Chakyar Kuta, which is there in Kerala, the artist, after the artist comes on stage, he has this small cloth which is opening and then closing. But actually, what he's doing is he's observing the audience, he's gauging the audience, and trying to understand, okay, what should I perform today in front of them and make them get interested in this. And he's so well read, he knows everything about art, politics, the situation of the condition of the country and the state and the people. So he knows how to innovate and improvise over there and get into the whole performance. And these things are very, very interesting. And these are forms which slowly are not getting a platform. See, something like Kathakali also, it takes so many hours to get ready. And today, after doing all that, the poor artist gets 15 minutes or 20 minutes on stage just to show a small excerpt of anything that he wants to show. And you feel sad because you want to show this art form, but you don't have an audience who's ready to sit for 3-4 hours and just watch a performance. So that at least the style is there, it is visually seen. These artists are ready to come forward and perform for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. But it's very sad because the whole process of getting ready in Kathakali is so intense, and it takes so many hours together. But
are you talking about Kathakali?
Yes, Kathakali, yes.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that something, I hope that leaders, political leaders in the states and the federal government of India will look around at other countries around the world, such as the United States, such as Canada, such as the UK, such as France, where there is institutional support for the education of the arts, for the sustainability of the arts, the sustainability of the artists themselves. Spic McKay is an organization that has made such an important mark
Yes.
in education in India, and making sure that young people in schools are exposed to the diversity of talent and discipline and artistry of music, of dance. It's just in Kiran Sheth and his team and
Yes.
the younger generation of artists have done in terms of Spic McKay.
You founded the Downtown Dance Festival, which is an annual event in New York City since 1982. What are its main and salient features?
The Battery Dance Festival, which now is called originally the Downtown Dance Festival. The hallmark of the festival is diversity of disciplines of dance forms. So we could have in 1 week flamenco, Manipuri, super contemporary avant-garde work, classical ballet, and this is what we stand for, is the cross the spectrum of dance. And our audience has learned over time that they're not going to get stuck if they don't like something on stage, because the next thing perhaps they will like. It's going to an art museum with a variety of different kinds of paintings. Somebody will stand mesmerized in front of one artwork, whereas somebody else will walk right by that and go over here. And so we recognize the fact that dance is incredibly diverse, much more so than most audiences understand, and we want to educate them to that full spectrum of dance styles. So that's one. Number two, it's free. It's outdoors. Somebody can walk up and see something and say, oh, this looks incredible. Let me sit down and watch. So that's part of it, bringing dance into everyday life, making dance accessible to the general public, which is a mantra of Battery Dance: artistic excellence and social relevance. And the social relevance part is giving people a license to appreciate, to attend, to learn about this form that we're passionate about.
And is this a full day thing or is it concentrated in the evenings with various stages or
It's
something like that?
changed. It started out as an art in the workplace at lunchtime, and then got converted because we had to move away from the shaded corporate plazas into a park setting where there was no shade. So you can't be in August in the full sun. The
Right.
dancers would burn their feet on the stage and the audience would be sweltering and nobody would stay. So we moved into an evening format so that the light changes, the sun sets, and the stage lights come up. So you see this change of day to night. We end every program with something called Everybody Dance Now, where one of the companies that has performed teaches some of the material, something very rudimentary and central to their practice, to the entire audience. So we get children, seniors, everybody standing up and moving together and dancing together, which is one of the most ecstatic, exhilarating part of the whole festival.
And they move into the audience and indulge with them.
The audience moves onto the stage, the dancers
Okay.
move into the audience.
Wow.
The audience is sitting on the grass.
Right.
So it's not a formal setting with theater style seating, although the park itself has an amphitheater feeling because it slopes down to the stage area, and in the background is the water, the sky, the Statue of Liberty, and the clouds. So,
Wow.
you know, here we are in New York where everybody moves very fast. We're a very fast-paced culture here, and you don't stop and look at the sky. If you stop and look at the sky, something's wrong. You don't have a job, you're not progressing. Get with the program, move, move, move. And so this is an opportunity to stop and contemplate the beauty, the enrichment, the lessons imparted by dance, and also to experience the ambiance, the nature, which we just don't get enough opportunity to do here in a very, very cluttered, crowded, you know, overdeveloped city.
What is the Dancing to Connect program? What is that about?
Dancing to Connect is our signature arts education program that began in 2006, and since then has been carried out in over 50 countries, maybe 60 countries by now around the world, including India. And to put it in a nutshell, in 20 hours, a group of young people who may or may not have had any formal dance training create a piece of choreography. And at the end of it, they perform on a big stage before their peers, their families, the general public. It was a really transformative experience for me in 2006 when I first experimented with this platform and saw young people find themselves, find their own bodies, find their own voice through movement. So that's essentially what it is.
And you've been traveling alone for this, or do you have a team of dancers
Oh,
coming?
no. This is not about Jonathan Hollander. This is about my dancers who are teaching artists who set this process in motion. I stand back. I do all of the groundwork with my staff to set these programs up. It takes months and months and months to put together the funding, to find the right partners and so forth. In India, we worked with a nonprofit organization, an NGO called Emancipation, that actually was founded by one of Battery Dance's board members, who was very, very concerned about the fact that the human trafficking tragedy and the fact that young girls and sometimes boys are rescued from the street, from the railway platforms, from these terrible conditions. And then they have no context for living other than what they knew, what they grew up doing. So her thesis was that in those first months after the rescue, some kind of very intense therapy experience must happen for these young people to help them heal, help them deal with their trauma, help them understand who they are in the world, and they are not some kind of lower species. They're respected, respectable human beings. So we had the opportunity to work with a group of girls in Delhi who were from that kind of background. And to see them laughing, to see them enjoying, to see them finding creativity within themselves, finding a voice, and performing on stage at the Ficky Auditorium at the end of it, being celebrated, being applauded, being given flowers for their own creation. Same thing we did in Badlapur outside of Mumbai. We had groups of girls and groups of young men. And the trauma that they had experienced, we don't even need to talk about. It's beyond belief. Yes. But to see that the human spirit is resilient and that dance can play a role in helping awaken the strength, the independent thinking, the independent sense of self among young people, no matter what they've been through. This is a remarkable thing. And a film actually has been made, a documentary film about this work. It's called Moving Stories. It will soon become available in India. It's part of Amazon Prime in America, but not yet in India. So perhaps we can work something out where your university could have a screening. We've had some screenings in India, very separate. So this is, but I'm very happy that this film was made so that it could convey what is otherwise hard to understand, to see that transformation.
Right. And do you always, do you revisit them also, or is it that you go to one particular place, you work with them for some time? Do you ever get a chance to go back to them after that?
Usually, sometimes we do, but usually we don't. And that's why we train the trainers. We find local people, local dancers, local teachers in each place we go, and to try to bring them in as trainees and shadowing and then partnering with us so that we leave something behind.
Right,
so
and
that
the
it's
chain
not
continues.
Just,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's very good, because actually otherwise what happens is those moments after that, suddenly when there's going to be a void, and that will bring them back to the same condition. So if this is
I will argue with that, Bijoy. I would say that they won't go back to the same condition because they have been awakened to a possibility that they never conceived of before. And part of that is self-respect. And part of it is a sense of teamwork.
Right.
When you're involved with dance, you're involved with something that's beyond the intellect. It's a primal part of the human condition and the human makeup. And so a window has opened. And even if we can't continue, and if there's no one to continue there, I think that they are changed. And we have experienced that by tracking the entrance and exit questionnaires and asking people certain markers about what they feel about themselves, what they feel about working with others. And what we see is that there is a very significant change just in a 20-hour, 1-week experience. And it's remarkable, actually. But it gives one hope. Because it shows that you can give someone an experience and show them a way to their own voice, their own independent thinking, their own independent actions that then they can apply in any and all elements of their lives going forward.
Yeah, and you've initiated and kindled that fire in them to understand themselves and their worth, because of which they said, okay, if we can do this, then I think if we try it on our own, we'll be able to do it. But the only reason I asked was because with all the living conditions and the financial conditions that all these people live through, many a times, it is hardships which draw them back into the same condition and everything. But it's an amazing thing to do, because at least there is a beginning and the momentum is there, and if it keeps rolling, I'm sure they will all
Another lesson that young people learn in this process is that if they concentrate and they focus and work hard on something, that they can achieve beyond what they thought possible.
Right.
In a group and individually. I think that life is so complicated now with smartphones and with constant screens that the ability to concentrate, the ability to focus is really limited, and it's an extremely challenging aspect of life for young people. And yet when they're in that dance studio or in a gymnasium or in a room doing this process, they put their phones down, and they channel their focus into achieving something they know they have to achieve by the end of this workshop. They're going to be on stage. Right. So there's an element of, nervousness, an element of competition in a healthy sense, because our teachers do not focus on competition. In fact, we discourage that idea. We say this is not about competition. Nobody is better than anyone else. Correct. We're all in this together. And only if we come together can we reach a successful outcome.
Right. That's very important, because, the moment you bring in competition, there's always that, the fear and the feeling that, oh, what if I don't? And that question remains in the mind of the child.
I think for all of us, even adults, as a choreographer, if you go into the dance studio and from the first hour, you're saying to yourself, this isn't good, somebody's not going to like it, the audience isn't going to like it, you can have that voice there. It can completely suffocate you. You won't be able to do a single thing.
Very true. In fact, when I was doing a symposium and we had a guru who was going to come and spend time with us, and in dancing we have this playing the talam, that is the cymbals, in tune and in time with the pieces and the jatis and all that. And all of us do it, but then many of us make mistakes and we don't do it the right way. So I thought it would be good to have a session with somebody who's really good at that, and have the teachers and students, everybody together, come and participate in that. So the first thing I said is, see, don't get embarrassed. Don't have any kind of inhibition that, oh, my student is also sitting with me. So if I make a mistake, what happens? She's going to be watching me. That'll be bad. So I said, see, we all make mistakes. We are here to correct ourselves and get at least a little better than what we're doing. So leave all your inhibitions behind. Everybody is the same, and let's work about that. And
I just had an experience of that today, because before we had this interview, and my dancer was in my dance studio on Zoom, connecting to a classroom in Germany where students were being exposed to the Dancing to Connect project that they're working on through Zoom for the first time. And one of my technical director, who was monitoring and making sure that everything was working properly, wrote me a note after the first half hour, and he said, Alex is incredible. He's doing the project with the students. Alex being the head teacher, the one who organized the program, he was actually in the studio with the students doing the project with them. He wasn't embarrassed that he's not a trained dancer at all. He'd more likely be on a mountain bike going on an expedition, or playing football or something like that, not dancing. But he threw that away and felt that if he were in the room with the students, that it might help encourage them to get through their own inhibitions.
Right. In all the choreographies that you have worked till today, is there any special piece that is very close to your heart?
Whatever piece I've been working on at that particular time is the one that's close to my heart. Because honestly, if you are not, giving 1,000% of yourself into a creation, then, you don't have any chance of success. So every time I started a new production, I tried to leave everything else behind and move into, the world of that new production. Shakti, or Return to the Source, or earlier productions like Laya Priya or Songs of Tagore. Each one of them took me over. I mean, I just gave myself to that process and tried not to think about, is this good? Is this bad? Is somebody going to like it?
Right. And all these, the Indian artists that you worked with, any very, very special moment that you had with any one of them? I'm sure because of all the people that you mentioned are all amazing artists. But sometimes something stays back in your mind, a special moment. Is there something that you can recall regarding any?
Well, I think I should talk about Unath Hassan Ratnaraju from Hassan, Karnataka, because he was on his way to a PhD at Mysore University. He had 150 students and had decided to make a dance center in the small city of Hassan rather than to dedicate himself to being one more dancer in Kolkata or Ahmedabad or Mumbai or Hyderabad, whatever. And he came to New York and came into the dance studio with our dancers, similar age, similar amount of years of practice, but totally different experience. And he had to start over again, like taking baby steps. But his ego was enough in control that he didn't think about, do I look like an idiot doing these movements that I've never done before? Are the dancers going to make fun of me because, here I am. I've performed on stage at Darpana. I've performed Natarani. I've performed in all the major cities of India and in Russia and in Ukraine, wherever. Now I'm starting over again like a baby. But he had the personality to persevere with that. And the result was this production that we performed in 2 national tours of India, in Sri Lanka, in Bangladesh, and across the United States, the Shakti, A Return to the Source. And honestly speaking, that production would not be what it is if he had not been part of it. Right. So I just single out that experience because I think it's very unique. And people were like, why did you choose him? There's so many others, when do I get my turn? The thing is, it was the singular experience. And artists are at foremost intuitive beings. I intuited that he had the humility, but also the experience of the physical training of Bharatanatyam and yoga. I think the yoga was critically important because he's a very advanced practitioner of yoga. So not only did he have the geometry and rhythm of Bharatanatyam, but he also had the curvilinear flow of yoga. And that gave him the critical elements that he could then process and merge with contemporary Western dancers. And I'm not sure that every person of his generation could have done that.
Right. By any chance, was that here in Ahmedabad at Natrani last year?
Yes, it was the Vikram Sarabhai festival.
Yes, I was there. In fact, I saw you there and I wanted to meet you, but there were so many people. And of course, Bharat and Akshay and Murli and all of them were there. And they were all busy talking to you and you moved to Natrani Cafe. So I said, okay, maybe I'll try and speak to him.
Yeah, I'm sorry we didn't meet in person, but here we are meeting in a very deep way. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. It was really special.
Not at all. Thank you very much.
I hope that the world will get to a point where we can meet in person and I can come and meet your students.
We'll certainly see you here next year for sure. By then, I'm sure God's going to be great and helping all of us with that. But thank you very much, Jonathan, for this wonderful interview. And I really appreciate the time that you gave me. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the pleasure and the privilege.
Thank you.